Hi and welcome to Slick Willy Fly, and now we're going to do the next installment in our three-part series on beginner flies designed for redfish. Obviously these will catch anything in the inshore, and for this part we're going to do Slick Willy version of a Slickback WIlly, which I have in the vise. And this fly again can be tied in a lot of different variants. Here's the same fly with eyes. Here's a black version of the exact same fly. And for the one we're going to tie today, I'm going to use some barred orange, which is pretty banged up, but I think we get enough Zonker on there to make this fly. I'm going to use a little bit of ginger color Cactus Chenielle and a little bit of Krystal Flash. So this meets all the criteria for the beginner three-part series. Very few materials, super easy to tie, super inexpensive. Let's change the camera angle and let's get in on it. Okay, so for the hook today, we're going to use a Mustad 34007 size 2 saltwater hook. But any saltwater hook that you like will work fine for this fly. For thread, because I'm going to make an orange fly, I'm going to use Ultra 100 denier in orange. But I will say this, a lot of times you'll see me tie with a white thread, and then I use a Sharpie to color my thread, and that works fine. And that's probably a good option for new fly tiers, so that you don't waste a bunch of money. Before I jump in on my thread, I'm going to put a little bit of lead thread, which I forgot to mention in my material list. Zonker floats a little bit till it's completely wet, and this will help the Zonker get down and get wet. This fly needs to be completely wet in order to work properly. Zonker has great action in the water, but it must be wet. So I just put, I don't know, 7-8 wraps of 0.20 lead thread, and I'm going to touch that with a little bit of glue just to make sure that I have enough. And I'm going to give that a second to dry, and I could use that second to pick out the section of Zonker that I want. This Zonker I have is really banged up, but I got enough here to make it work. So that's plenty right there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. When you cut Zonker, you have to make sure that you only cut the skin. You don't cut the fibers. That way you have a piece left that is usable. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and set that aside so it's ready. And now I could start my thread. I know my super glue is not completely dry, but that's fine. That'll help. That will actually help the thread be locked in place as well, which I like. I like to make sure that my thread ends up on both sides of that lead before I start covering the lead. And what that does is it keeps the lead from moving. For this fly, I actually want to bring the thread into the bend of the hook, because I'm going to wrap the chenille into the bend of the hook. And what that does is it keeps my Zonker where I want it. So the first material is this ginger chenille. The size, for people who are interested, where's the bag? Here. The size is 15 millimeter, but you don't have to have 15 millimeter. You can easily get away with smaller chenille. You can pluck off a little bit off the end, just like that, exposing the thread. Lay your thread on the hook and capture your thread. Now, you have to take your thread all the way to where you want your chenille to begin. And then I move the thread to just beyond the lead. And now I'm going to use the rotary function and wiggle around the point of the hook and just basically wrap up the shank of the hook. Nothing real fancy going on here. Now this fly this chenille is actually probably enough flash for this fly. You probably don't need to put any Krystal flash on if you don't want to. I just happen to love this Krystal flash that I'm going to use. So done with that. This is such an easy fly. So I have this copper colored Krystal flash that I just think looks awesome in this fly. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to fold it in half. Then I'm going to take that, put it on my thread about as even as I possibly can. And then, well, that didn't work as I had hoped. Start again. Again, I do my videos in one take, and now you see why. Alright, that worked better. Take it right to the top, and I lock it in right on top. And I'll trim it after. And I made a mistake. Back that off, and you'll see what I mean in a second. Because of the way that that this fly is going to be tied, it's going to right hook up. So now I can attach my Krystal flash. Just like that. Perfect. Alright. So now I'm going to take my hook out of the vise, flip it over to make my life easier, pop it back in the vise. So now I go back to that rabbit zonker that we have. Alright, so you're going to take your zonker. You're going to, I like to moisten it, which helps me keep everything a little under control while I'm trying to establish my length. And what I need to establish is where I'm going to pierce the skin. And where I'm going to pierce the skin is basically, this is the point that I'm trying to match against the skin of my zonker. Because this is, when it lays down, this is where it needs to be pierced. So I put my thumbnail just where I want it pierced. It's important that the Krystal flash is divided in the correct orientation now, 2 on each side. And I try my best to be dead center of the skin with the hook point. And that should split the fur. Beautiful. I love it. So now I just, a couple of loose turns just to make sure that I like the way everything looks. And that I don't want to move anything, because this is my last chance to move anything. And if I'm happy with the way everything looks, now which I am, now I just lock it all down. Give that a little trim. When you're slicking this back, don't forget there's a hook in there. Easy to hook yourself. Just trimming it up to make it look a little bit cleaner. And now it's a whip finish. It's a whip finish, and again, I like using my whip finish tool. It's not that I have a problem with people who finish by hand. I just personally think that the whip finish tool makes a very clean whip finish. And now the last thing I'm gonna do is a little UV resin on the knot. Also not necessary. You can use super glue. You can do anything you want. You know, at this point, if you wanted to put eyes on the fly, you would make a head with eyes. Absolutely not necessary. I just happen to like making eyes. But like, for example, here's a version, no eyes. I mean, that's absolutely nothing wrong with that fly right there. That'll catch fish all day. So I like both ways. And this one's not going to get any eyes either. But it does need to have a little head cement, I would say. You can use hard as nails. You can use, there's a ton of products out there that you can use. You don't have to use UV resin. You can use super glue. You could use Zap-A-Gap. Zap-A-Gap's a great product. I like using this one. That'll lock that thread in. The fly finish. Here I'm just gonna make sure that this all ends up nice and neat. Lay everything down. Just like that. And once I like it, it's time for a new lamp. I actually have a UV lamp on order, waiting for it to arrive. This one's starting to give me trouble. But yeah, that's it. Super, super simple. I'll trim the Krystal flash if it needs to be trimmed. This is an absolute killer. Super easy to tie, perfect for beginners. Redfish, sea trout, snook, juvenile tarpon, because the size of the hook has to be really juvenile tarpon because of the size of the hook. But jacks, snappers, you know, pretty much any aggressive fish. I bet you if you took this in a freshwater hook and you took this for largemouth bass, I bet you they'd crush it. I've never tried it, but I just can't imagine that they wouldn't. Anything that's a predator, I think, would just destroy this fly. So that's the fly. Let's see if I can't show it to you. All right, so welcome back. So there it is, the Slickback WIlly. This is a great fly, perfect for beginners. Again, these packages are perfect for beginners because you get so much material out of these packages. You can end up tying so many flies. So I highly recommend it. This is an assassin. This is a great fly. Don't forget to look me up on Instagram. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Good luck catching. See you on the next video.